Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices with Nandagopal Rajan. We're all living in very exciting times with our own intelligence sort of moving to the side and artificial intelligence trying to take over. But that's a conversation we will have in depth over the many weeks coming, because I think that is at the top of our minds right now. In fact, I remember somebody very senior in the tech industry telling me a few years back, AI is the new electricity, and we are already seeing the impact it's having in tech. And we are hearing so many ominous statements coming from all over the place on how tech is changing. With us to talk about this and how this is changing your work life, for instance, is Bhaskar Basu, who's country head modern work at Microsoft India. Bhaskar, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nandu. A pleasure to be here.
So, Bhaskar, just let me start by sort of asking you, what is the modern work vertical at Microsoft? How is your work structured? Like, what all do you do?
Okay, good question. So let me respond to that in two parts. I think I look at my job in two buckets, right? One is more of a philosophy, and one is more of a business and a function. And I think the philosophy is all about how we are looking at redefining work and workplaces as the environment around us rapidly changes. Right? Think about it. The question is no longer about when, where, and how we work, but also fundamentally about why we work. And I think a large part of my work revolves around how we enable new experiences for this new hybrid work environment that we find ourselves today in. Specifically, I lead a business practice which is, I think, called the Microsoft 365 suite of solutions. Think about it that anything which enables productivity, collaboration, communications, which fundamentally enhance the overall experience of working and driving impact through productivity and collaboration nuances is what basically I lead as a charter for the business that I drive for the Microsoft India business.
Interesting, vertical right now, right? Because you're already calling it modern work, but the definition of modern work itself has sort of changed in the past 2 3 years thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Absolutely. And look, let me kind of go a little bit deeper because I think it's a very pertinent and a very relevant question, especially in today's environment. Look, we've always been about modernizing experiences, and therefore, I think just in terms of nomenclature, the word modern workplace, and then we refer to modern work. But think about it as we kind of went into the pandemic and beyond. I think hybrid work pretty much represents the biggest shift of how we work in our generation. Think about hybrid work as a new operating model, right? This spans people, it spans places, it spans processes. And at Microsoft, we are constantly exploring as to how technology can fundamentally support all these three P's of hybrid work. We call that people, we call that places, and processes. And think about it that employees and leaders are often at odds about what constitutes productivity. How do you maintain autonomy while ensuring accountability, outcome, benefits of flexibility, the role of what the office is providing today? And we believe that to bridge some of these gaps, which is coming as a result of hybrid work, a new approach is needed, which recognizes that work is no longer just a place but an experience. And I'm really, focusing on the word experience because experience is what basically helps keep employees engaged and connected, no matter where they're working from. And I think the myriad of tools, technologies, evolution of what we see around us is fundamentally driven or leveraged to drive that experience. And that's what we're trying to do in today's hybrid work environment.
I was actually hiring somebody recently, and he told me that, like, he doesn't see himself coming to an office space anymore. You know, and then I asked him, "Where do you live?" And he lives one block away from our office, and he knows that. So the expectation that employees have from the workplace, and I don't know whether you can even call it the workplace anymore, or their work, or their, even that's changing a lot. And I remember being part of conversations a few years back when we were saying that the advent of the smartphone has improved, has sort of pushed up the expectations employees have from the devices that a company expects them to work on. But now that experience, as you're saying, is they are going to compare the experience at work with everything else they do, right? So is that a very challenging space to be in, because you would have cutting edge technology coming up in other things and that people are getting used to, but then you are sort of pushed to give it to them on a daily basis too.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let me answer that in two parts. Let me take a step back, and I'll just connect back to the question that you just asked. So, Nandu, Microsoft basically believes very strongly in the whole concept about listening, right? So, as I very rightly said, expectations are rapidly evolving, right? And they're frankly evolving at a pace sometimes it's difficult to kind of put a finger about what's on the top of an employee's mind at any point of time. So for the last few years, we've been running a very, I would say, immersive research. We call that the Work Trend Index findings, and we poll people from different sectors of business, corporate India across the world. We actually spoke to about 20,000 people. Over 20 countries a few years back, just to kind of understand what's on people's mind. What is it in terms of expectations that employees have, what leaders have, and fundamentally that provides the foundation of what is the kind of experience we need to be providing employees of today. Because look, the workplace is so fluid, so rapidly evolving. The demographics of the work environment is so rapidly shifting. It's important for us to read and understand what people expect. And therefore we ran this survey, and this is about a few months old, but I think three very clear learnings emerged. The first one, look, we use this word productivity so often, right? When we speak about collaboration, we speak about work. We use the word productivity very often, right? What does productivity mean, right? For some, it means the ability to do more things in lesser period of time. It means how do we leverage tools to kind of becoming more efficient. But more often than not, productivity is also looked at, frankly, from the leadership as to what kind of meaningful number of hours are also put in by employees. And as it happened over the pandemic, as more and more people were spending time in front of their screens, if you may, I think the whole concept of productivity started getting certain new dimensions. So leaders and organizations very clearly felt that look, the employees are not productive enough, right? So it was clearly measured in terms of hours spent, in terms of meetings done. And whereas employees and the rank and file of the organization felt that the amount of work that they were doing was far, far higher than ever before. And this is what we refer to as the productivity divide, or the paradox, in which there is clearly a disconnect in terms of what employees are feeling and what leaders are thinking. And I think the core lesson that we got out of this entire experience was that we need to ensure work is becoming more outcome oriented. So productivity is a means, but not an end in itself. And this concept was fundamentally ratified pretty much by over 90% of people across the board. The second part, and I think you raised a very important question, I think concept on a trend, as people come back to work, right? So we're trying, I think, the two subparts to the question. Do we need people to come back to work? Are people happy working remotely? Because look, the kind of experiences that our broadband infrastructure, tools, tech is enabling is clearly at a far higher peg than we've ever seen before. But I think the larger learning was that employers and organizations believe there's tremendous benefit of people coming back to work, at least in bits and pieces. Because look, you interact with one another, there's a connection back to the mission and vision of the organization. And therefore there's a very large push, if you see, across organizations to welcome people back at work. But we realize when we ask people, why would you come back to work? Is that for the three kinds of coffee, or five types of tea, or the four kinds of snacks? And the answer overwhelmingly was not. The answer was, I come to office because I have the ability to engage with my peers and my other colleagues and learn in the process. And therefore, we define this whole term called social capital. I think the larger overwhelming philosophy or intent of people coming back to work is because they like to interact, they learn from each other, and there's a larger bonhomie of people when they show up at work. And the third part clearly is that look, there's so much of attrition. We've spoken about the Great Resignation. We've seen in the last couple of years so many people leaving their jobs, going over to greener pastures. And when we ask people as to what are those two or three things that would ensure that you're connecting back to the organization, what is that experience that you're kind of expecting? And the answer was, if I am re-recruited, right? Which means, is the organization providing a foundation of learning, of skilling, of career development, of ensuring that I'm providing experiences which allows an employee to literally grow day after day. Now think about it, as you spoke about, coming back to your question, Nandu, what are employees expecting? Employees are expecting that there is a tremendous amount of connection by the organization. The employees are expecting that outcome orientation, not productivity or hours logged, is an imperative. Employees are expecting that other people are turning up at office and ensuring that there is a connection or a social capital which is being built amongst them. And I think that's where we believe that tech has a very, very important role to play. Technology is not, as I said, an end, it's a means to an end. If you're able to drive technology interventions which basically provide a surround employee experience, makes them more outcome oriented, helps them drive more connection back to the vision and mission of the organization, providing tools and capabilities which allows flexibility. If you're working remotely or working at the office or working in different parts of, we call that work from anywhere. You're working from anywhere, but fundamentally the ethos of connection are around engagement, are around immersion, are around experience and re-recruitment. There's a far higher connection back to the organization which drives business outcomes. And that's how we are looking at our products and tools to kind of enable this entire transformation.
So, when we talk about products, so how have the products had to evolve with these new requirements? You had the pandemic phase where people were suddenly, sort of forced to work from home, and then you now have the hybrid phase, maybe moving, more towards the work from office again. But we are all, sort of know that work from home is going to stay in some form or the other, maybe for the rest of our careers. So how has the product had to evolve to keep in pace with these kind of requirements?
I mean, very, very interesting question. And let me kind of break it down in parts. I think the first part is, as I said, the intent for us to listen, right? And ensure that our products, our capabilities are based on what, our customers, our consumers, our users, our champions are asking for. And as we kind of listen to more and more people, our customers and partners, I think we understood that the products, our capabilities needed to evolve, keeping in mind those three P's. It's about the people, what kind of empowerment, what kind of experience we are driving and enabling for our people. It was about places. Clearly, as hybrid work kind of came in, it was about understanding how does hybrid work in terms of engagement, in terms of working remotely, coming together, work, right? And we've tried to evolve our product capabilities to kind of ensure that this whole bridging physical and digital spaces concept kind of lies. And third is clearly around processes. And think about it, the way we were hiring people during the pandemic was very different to how we were hiring before. The way we were growing people and engaging with people digitally was very different to how we were doing that before. So I think there was a rapid amount of change in terms of the process. So while we keep these three P's in mind, I think the question clearly is, what are we doing about it, right? How are our product, I think, interventions and evolutions kind of taking place so that we're able to address these fundamental philosophies? I think again in three parts, and let me be a little bit more specific on the product sets themselves. I think the first part clearly is around the whole idea that in a hybrid world, people and organizations need solutions that are fluid, that are dynamic, and that are cloud powered. The heart of everything that we do, Nandu, is clearly our hero capability, which is Microsoft Teams. Now, Microsoft Teams today is not just a chat platform. It's an integrated platform that meets the needs of collaboration, productivity, employee engagement of organizations. And that's at the heart of it. I'll come back to Teams in just about a little bit. But Teams to us is basically that canvas, which is bringing this entire, I think, employee transformation to life. The second part clearly is about meetings. We learned that meetings are rapidly changing, right? It's no longer about showing up in the same office or in neighboring cubicles or working remotely. It was a mix of everything. And while people were working with more flexible hours, people said that we need tools that support asynchronous collaboration as well as synchronous collaboration. So think about it. If I have a team here in Gurgaon, I may have a team member in Vietnam, and it's not always easy to slot that time, which is convenient for people, coming in from different places. And we realized that as meetings were evolving, synchronous and asynchronous conversations started therefore becoming that much more of a need of the time. And therefore things like, how do we record meeting time, how do we cascade notes, how do we make meetings more intelligent. And that's where we've kind of said that, look, Microsoft Teams rooms, that's basically our cloud conferencing capability, had to rapidly evolve to address the needs and demands of this new generation. And the third part clearly was employee experience. And Nandu, this is one space which we are extremely passionate about. We believe that, over the course of the pandemic, there has been definitely a much more heightened sensitivity and understanding to employee well-being. How am I able to get insights from my team members? How do I understand that I'm able to engage with my team members? How do I drive balance between work and life? How do I provide goals which are meaningful? And we've curated and come up with a completely new category, which we refer to as the employee experience platform. And that's where Microsoft Viva is basically designed to meet the expectations of the evolving workplace. So, in a nutshell, there are tremendous number of I would say evolutions, transformations, innovations we're driving to the multiple different product lines under Microsoft 365. But Teams, in terms of the overall collaboration landscape, the automation of processes that it drives, meetings rooms in terms of the hybrid, synchronous and asynchronous conversations we're able to enable, and employee experience through Microsoft Viva. These are clear places where we have invested tremendous amount of energy and time behind.
So the the other aspect is like, how do you, we are talking from a front facing perspective where you are interacting with the employees, and yeah, but that also means this transformation has put a lot of pressure on the companies too, on how to figure out how to manage a workforce that is hybrid, that is maybe working 24/7 according to their convenience. So how do you handhold the companies to work with these tools which have also evolved?
Brilliant, brilliant question. Brilliant question. Look, we've learned, as I said, I think it's a product life cycle, right? We listen to customers, we reshape, innovate, develop our products. We explain to customers as to why these set of capabilities are important. But I think what you hit the nail on the head is, how do you drive customer success? How do you drive adoption? And how do you drive transformation? In terms of what the organization is doing. I think the answer, frankly, lies in two parts. The first part is, we've learned that it's very important for us to be very sensitive and understand the nuances of every organization we engage with, right? Because, yeah, products are horizontal, they fit many needs. But we've learned over time that different sectors, different segments, industries, and therefore organizations have different needs. When I engage with the CHRO of a digital native customer versus the CHRO of, let's say, an IT organization, the expectations are very different. A case in point is, when I spoke to the CHRO of a large unicorn customer, and she said, "Look, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had in the COVID timeframe was culture standardization. Right? We've got a very strong culture, but we are hiring left, right, and center. We've grown 10,000 people in 18 months. Somebody sitting in Ahmedabad, somebody in Indore, somebody in Delhi, right? And it's difficult for me to kind of standardize different elements of my culture. And when we go deeper, right, we try and understand if what are the imperatives and nuances of what they're asking for. Is it in terms of the ability to drive standardization and hiring? Is it in terms of employee engagement? Is it in terms of better and eclectic tools for collaboration? And we've learned over time that every organization has slightly different nuances in terms of their expectations. So I think the first part of the answer would be the approach that Microsoft has to understand and discover those nuances. It is very business specific, it is very function specific. The expectation of an operations organization versus the business organization versus the HR organization could be very different. And what we do have is that we have teams in Microsoft, Nandu, we call them the customer success teams, who work with the customer to kind of provide that connection between the business and cultural imperative to the tool and the product that we kind of fitting. The second part of that is if you've got a product alignment or a tool alignment to the larger, I would say, cultural transformation or business transformation objectives, we actually work hand in glove with the customer to figure out what is the best way to drive adoption. Sometimes it's about coaching the coaches and finding champions within the organization, telling them how this will change life, how it will make better. And I think a big learning we have had is when we make it come to life, if there's discernible outcome, if there's a benefit that we're able to relate, I think it's far, far easier for that coaching to kind of go down to the larger, I think, scale of the organization. We have learned that awareness sessions, doing workshops, even gamifying adoption by saying that, how many people you were able to post on Teams over the last 7 days, or how many people, were engaged on a platform over the last 7 days. Many different elements is something that we have learned. So I think the answer is learning and hearing and listening from the company, ensuring that our teams around customer success are partnering with the organization to drive the adoption of the capabilities. And third is making it fun. I mean, no tool is adopted because it's a great product, but because it's fun to use, it drives outcomes. I'm able to put an emoji. I'm able to put a blurred background. Right? These are fun elements. You're able to put on an avatar. These are fun elements. So we've learned that when you mix up the technology aspect to an adoption aspect and the fun aspect, it really goes to a different orbit altogether. So these are broader, I think, contours of how we look at it.
And what you do, it enables collaboration between employees, colleagues. But we are also talking about collaboration from a virtual assistant, which is going to make your work easier. It's going to cut a lot of corners which are maybe unnecessary or doesn't need human intervention. So how is AI coming into this picture now?
Good, and I'm glad this came up. Look, before even the great big changes and updates that we're hearing all around us, OpenAI and ChatGPT and artificial intelligence taking over the world, I think as a fundamental philosophy, Nandu, we've been invested in process automation, making things smarter, making our canvases richer, and making it that much easier for organizations and employees to do work more effectively. So I think as a broader organization philosophy, driving tech interventions which make things easier, backed up with data and machine learning, I think has been a pretty much an underlying philosophy for a long period of time. We've had chatbots when people were just starting to talk about the whole idea about bots. But I think let me come closer to the question that you had, which is in terms of AI and productivity and what we're thinking about it. Look, what we've learned is that organizations are constantly exploring ways to optimize IT investments. Nandu, that's I think a very clear learning that we have, and business outcomes, business results are something which are very core to every organization. Organizations have said, look, we're looking at solutions which can adapt to change, which can help us improve productivity, which can help us reduce costs. So think about it. There is a larger business imperative around AI, around automation, and why we want to do it. Now, modern tools which are powered by AI clearly hold the promise that we will be able to boost individual productivity, team productivity, organizational productivity, and fundamentally enable changes in the way that we're working. Now, this promise, frankly, at Microsoft is becoming a rapid reality for some period of time. Now, we're working to incorporate new AI powered capabilities across our consumer and enterprise products, and including very much Microsoft Teams. Now, take the recently launched Teams Premium, for example. I'm sure you would recall that we made an announcement saying that we have basic Teams, which is a canvas for doing multiple things, but we're coming up with Teams Premium. Now, what is Teams Premium? Teams Premium is basically a canvas which brings together the latest AI tech, including large language models, which are powered by OpenAI's GPT 3.5. The intent, for example, we have found is, can we make meetings more intelligent? Can we personalize them more? Can we protect them more? Be it one-to-one meetings, be it large meetings, be it virtual appointments, be it webinars. The idea was, can we use the OpenAI algorithms to kind of rapidly make changes in the intelligence of conversation, of collaboration, and of connections. There's a ton of time consuming administrative work in meetings. All of us have been there, right? We take notes, we try to figure out who spoke, what they spoke, what are the important takeaways, what are the right action items, how do I assign them, how do I give them to owners. And Teams, by infusing these AI throughout the meeting experience, is trying to help drive that level of automation and making it smarter, right? We have come up with things called intelligent recap. Users automatically get generated meeting notes. They get recommended tasks. They get personalized highlights. Right? Users get the information. More importantly, when they want it, where they want it. Now we have not, disclosed everything. There's a lot more exciting stuff to come. But in the coming months, you'll see key points and takeaways even after the meeting, with AI-generated notes automatically getting created. These are powered by GPT 3.5. Follow-up of actions with AI-generated tasks and action items. These will automatically happen as the meeting kind of gets over. So AI is basically here, Nandu, with some of the, to address some of the toughest collaboration challenges. Think about it, when we get into virtual meetings, many times in India and globally, we find people who are natively speaking different languages, right? We have come up with AI interventions like captions in Teams. We're trying to see how real-time captions can be incorporated as people are speaking, even if they're speaking in different languages, right? If meeting participants speak different languages, we will spend time in real-time translation and transcription. So, and we do that for over 40 spoken languages today. So, long story short, Nando, there's a ton of extremely exciting stuff. As you rightly said, AI is again something which is basically helping us, minimize the administration of our work, drive better productivity, drive better automation. Remember, we've spoken about people, places, and processes, and AI is fundamentally kind of lighting up use cases in all the three pillars, if I may.
Before we wind up, can I ask you, as somebody who is leading a space that is, sort of become center of whatever we do, literally, at work. So, is there something that really excites you right now, looking at the future?
Yeah, I think three things, if I may. I think the first is the COVID time period was frankly a moment of transformation in terms of thinking, right? And I think what excited me was that our customers and partners came back with extremely, I would say, differentiated and a very different set of expectations and asks. And I think what excited me tremendously about the digital transformation and the, I would say, the change in thinking was about how organizations were looking at productivity, were looking at well-being, were looking at cultural transformation, were looking at the fundamentals of how work is getting done. I think we took work for granted for a long time before COVID hit us, right? It was always about, how do we use our tools? How do we use productivity tools? And how do we make fancy documents? But I think the nuanced expectations around how do I provide an experience? How do I re-recruit? How do I drive cultural transformation? How do I drive immersion and connection back to the organization? I think these are, as a business owner of modern and hybrid work, these are extremely positive, I would say, developments for us to learn, listen, and act on. I think the second part is I'm extremely excited by the sheer level of innovation that Microsoft is able to kind of enable, right? Right from the top level leadership to every rung of the organization. It's about how do we hack, right? It's not about driving product sales, or of course that's a good positive business outcome, but it's about how do we drive an experience, how do we build and orchestrate and weave our tools together to drive that experience that our customers are asking for. And this frankly is a space of great passion and connection for me, that we are genuinely able to make a change to the expectations of our customers. And lastly, I think we realize that the power of listening to customers directly and to what data and research tells us about their needs. I think this power of listening and what it's unearthing, I think, is a point of great inspiration, because we're learning so much, Nandu. Right? I think in the 2.5 years, over the last 2.5 years, we would have probably learned more than what we did in the last decade in terms of the kind of changes and shifts we're seeing in the workplace of today. And that's again something of great personal motivation. We are very committed to understanding how work is evolving, how we can shape and refine our tools, and fundamentally create products that to benefit the greatest number of people. And that excites me tremendously, Nandu.
So thank you, Bhaskar, for being on the show. It is fascinating, and again, this is something that touches a lot of lives of our listeners because they are using your tools, as we speak. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Nandu, and it was a pleasure to be here.
So you were listening to Our Own Devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest and a lot more learning. Till then, goodbye, and you can listen to our podcast everywhere you listen to your podcast.